All right, Zera Shimshon, Parshas Emor. So at the beginning of Parshas Emor, we learn about some of the commandments that are unique to Kohanim, and one of them being that they are not allowed to, in most cases, become impure through contact with dead bodies, with some exceptions. Now, this is not true for a Yisrael. Like, for example, I am a Yisrael myself, and hypothetically, if I come into contact with a dead body, I didn't do anything wrong. The only problem would be is if then I wanted to, let's say, go to the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, I would not be allowed to until I purify myself with the ashes of the red heifer, the paraduma. But there's nothing wrong with me becoming impure intrinsically with contact with the dead body. However, when it comes to Kohanim, this week's Parsha says that even if they're not going to the Holy Temple, Kohanim are not allowed to come into contact with dead bodies, which is why you don't see Kohanim, even in today's world, working in hospitals and going to cemeteries, because those are places where there are usually dead bodies. So the Zera Shimshon has a comment on an interesting medrash on this week's Parsha. We're going to read the English, but the Hebrew's quoted up above. And it might be hard to kind of understand, and I'm not sure if, how, grammatically correct the translation is in terms of that there's some funky words in there, but it's mostly good. Another matter, speak to the priests. That is what is written. Fear of the Lord is pure and endures forever. Rabbi Levi said, due to the fear that Aaron had before the Holy One, blessed be he merited this portion, which will not move from him, from his sons, not from his sons' sons, until the end of all generations was it given to him. Which portion is that? The portion of the corpse, as it is stated. The Lord said to Moshe, speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron. So this is based on one of the first verses on this week's Parsha. And this medrash might have been a little hard to understand, so don't worry about it. We're just going to focus on one of the Zera Shimshon's many questions on this medrash. And his question that we're going to focus on is that the medrash says that out of all the mitzvahs that the Kohanim have, it highlights this specific mitzvah as being something eternal. It says that the mitzvah of having to keep away from dead bodies and tumas mace, that is something that is eternally given to the Kohanim. To which the Zera Shimshon says, okay, but that's kind of a strange comment because we know that there are other mitzvahs that the Kohanim have to eternally keep. So, for example, even though there's no holy temple or anything today, Kohanim are not allowed to marry women of tainted lineage. They're not allowed to marry, for example, women who have been divorced. So, why is it that the Medrash specifically highlights this mitzvah, meaning the idea of that Kohanim have to keep away from dead bodies, more than it highlights, let's say, the idea that Kohen can't marry a woman of tainted lineage? So Zera Shimshon says a beautiful idea. See, what is it that a person might have thought? Because that is a lot of times what the Talmud or the Midrash comes to do. Meaning the rabbis know the Torah, and they say, oh, somebody read this verse, they might think that this is what the verse means. So we have to write something down, la fuke, that's the yeshivish term, so that they don't think that, because without our commentary, they're going to think this, but that's not exactly the right connotation. They need to think that. So what is the example over here? A person might think that I'm a Kohen, and in today's world, all Kohanim are impure. They've usually come into contact either with items or with dead bodies themselves that have made them impure. And in today's world, Kohanim do not have the ability to get rid of this impurity because we lack the ashes of the paraduma, the red heifer, which allow a Kohen to become, anybody really, to become pure from the highest level of impurity, which is that of a dead body. But we don't have that today. So what might a Kohen think? Well, I'm impure, and there's nothing I can do about it. We don't have these ashes. So you know what? What's the problem with me going to a cemetery every day or me working in a hospital now? I'm already impure. Can I, how much damage more can I take from being around impurity if I'm already impure? So therefore, the rabbis did not want a person to think this way. And they highlighted this specific mitzvah as being one that is eternally given to the Kohanim, meaning that they have to keep purity so that the Kohanim would not think that once they become impure and they don't have the means to purify themselves, that they can just continue to become impure, even though they're impure. So therefore, the rabbis wrote their comment so they wouldn't think such a way. Now, that's all nice and dandy if you are a Kohen. And here's the thing. We learn from the works of Chassidus that all 613 mitzvahs have applicability to every single Jew. Even mitzvahs like, for example, I'm not a Kohen, but there's a message for me in the mitzvahs of the Kohen, meaning they're just as relevant to me as they are to Kohanim. So what practical message should I be taking from this mitzvah? So the practical message that you're supposed to take from this mitzvah, I'm going to demonstrate it through a parable or a story I one time heard from one of my rebbeim. So there was one time a murderer in jail in Vilna. And I believe the Vilna Gaon, for whatever reason, was thrown in jail. That was a common thing that the non-Jewish authorities would throw Jewish rabbis who were completely innocent in jail in those days, either for ransom or something. And the murderer, who was a Jew, was sitting next to the great sage, the Vilna Gaon. And the Vilna Gaon saw the murderer about to eat bread. And we know that before a person eats bread in Judaism, they have to wash their hands ritually. And so the Vilna Gaon said, ahem, you're about to eat bread. Did you wash and make blessings yet? And the murderer looked at the Vilna Gaon like this. He said, you're going to tell me these hands, which have blood stains all over them from murder, need to wash for eating bread and are able to wash for eating bread and are able to make a blessing? And he started laughing. And the Vilna Gaon says, I don't understand. I don't understand what you said. What do those two things have to do with each other? Oh, so you're telling me, the Vilna Gaon, I'm paraphrasing, says that it says in the Shulchan Aruch, in the book of Jewish law, that a murderer doesn't have to wash his hands and make a blessing before eating bread? That's what it says? Is that what you're telling me? So the Vilna Gaon could not understand the guy's argument, because in Jewish law, his argument has no validity, right? So what is the message over there? The message is that no matter how far you've fallen, okay, you still have to keep going. Meaning, don't let this Yetzer Hara, don't let the evil inclination get to you. No matter how far down you go, you can't just say, well, I'm already lost, so what's the purpose of me going to synagogue? Well, God doesn't want to hear my prayers. We know that's wrong, because over here, the rabbis are highlighting to us that a Kohen, once he becomes impure, he cannot keep becoming impure. He can't keep coming in contact with dead bodies, even if there is no remedy for his current impurity. He's still required to maintain a level of purity. So what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to extrapolate from that case and derive the message. And the message is that no matter what impurities you are dealing with in your life, you cannot give in and say, well, I'm dealing with this some impurity. I'm not even going to try to do any mitzvahs. I'm not even going to try to go to the Torah shir or anything. No, that is not the right way. And we see that in this week's Parsha that you should go. All right, Yasher Koach.